It's Dave Lawrence, and thank you for joining us. We're having a very special little mid-show chat, I guess you would say. One show's done, another one's still to go. It's guitarist Steve Kimock and keyboardist Jeff Chimenti, and these guys are in town doing a run of dates, Steve Kimock and Friends, and we had Steve on the phone, you may or may not recall, and we're following it up with a little chat at the venue. Steve, great to see you again.
Nice to see you and nice to be here.
Thank you for aloha and mahalo for that. And you, nice to meet you, Jeff.
Likewise, nice to meet you.
And these two cats, as you probably know if you heard the phone interview with Steve, strong associations with the Grateful Dead from both of these dudes. First, how long have you known Brother Jeff?
Jeez.
2006, 7? No, actually, I met you the very first time. I met you 20 years ago.
Wow. Any memory on you? No?
We were rehearsing with the Dead at the time, and you came by Belmarin. You got a big old beard. And you were like just getting ready. Maybe you were mid-tour, or I can't remember, and that was the very first time we met, but the very first time we played was probably when we did with Rat Dog together, which was probably 2006 or 7, something like that. But.
That's very cool. That's very, very cool.
He has 2 brain cells left to rub together.
Well, yeah. They're the only 2 I got.
So you guys have a little bit of history together, and of course both of them have this shared love of the Grateful Dead. We were talking to Steve about some of that the other day, and Steve, you were sharing your first experience getting to work with the Cats was Donna Jean and Keith, yeah?
That's exactly right, yeah.
And about what year, 79, 80?
Yeah, in there somewhere, I guess shortly after they left the Grateful Dead, but I don't remember. It was so long ago, I don't remember the year.
And understandably, it has been a while, and then you've added so many experiences.
Brain cells too.
He does.
Well, I was pretty much a free spirit, really, back then. So it was not or as Ryland might say, my favorite number of the alphabet is pink. Something like that.
Vegetable.
He's definitely a good way to start, though, with those particular Cats. When was your first experience getting to work with any of the Cats?
It was Bob Weir when I started in 1997.
Okay, so it was Rat Dog.
Dog, yes. And I had, shame to say, but I just really had no Grateful Dead experience. I didn't know any of their music. I obviously knew of them, but it was kind of a fluke how I got into that fold. And
How?
I was working at the time with Dave Ellis, the saxophone player, and I was part of his jazz quartet, and he ended up getting the Rat Dog gig at that point, and just kind of casually said, "Hey, if you happen to need some keys to jam with, let me know." And then 2 days later, he called and said, "You're not going to believe it, they're looking for a keyboard player," and that's all she wrote.
And then from that, the transition on, you've gotten to work with a number of others, so you've done some, obviously you're still part of the fold with their current enterprise. Explain what happened after Rat Dog.
Just kind of playing along, and next thing you know is they reformed the Dead as the other ones, and then slash into the Dead, but it was you're in, and just kind of from that, I was doing some stuff with Phil Lesh and Friends, and then and shortly after did some stuff a little bit with Mickey, and then Billy came into the fold with the Dead stuff. So by that time, that was the core 4 were back together, and I was honored to be a part of that. And ever since. So.
And musically, Steve was telling the story about the Dead was something that was still foreign to him when he was in high school. He was just getting exposed to it, parties and stuff. He was more like a Sabbath guy. That was one of the bands that he had dropped a name of. And we were riffing on that, Tony Iommi and Jerry, 2 distinctive guitar players. Yourself, where were you in terms of your own inspirations musically? Meaning when you got the opportunity to do the thing with Rat Dog, were you a fan at all, or was this just a great opportunity?
It was a great opportunity. Honestly, like I said, I didn't know the stuff, and then once I started getting into it, and then all of a sudden it was Bob decided that, hey, we want to start pulling out some of the chestnuts, and I started going through the catalog and started making charts and doing all that stuff, and I was listening. I was going, my God, there's so much great music. How the hell did I miss this? But I was just I was in the jazz world basically, and that was my upbringing, and I was very fortunate there. I was doing well for myself and playing with a lot of people, a lot of opportunities and stuff. But once I got into that, I kind of had to like jump in all the way. Otherwise, I was going to get swallowed up.
And you have stayed in it to great success. I mean, so it was a huge opportunity for you.
It's I feel it's a good match, and I'm just, like I said, honored to be a part of it. And they're all my brothers. Everybody's my brother, and just feel part of the family, and it's a blessing.
Yeah, well, you're a fantastic musician. Steve, you shared a cool story the other day. I actually got a question from a listener. We were doing like a listener appreciation event the other night. So somebody was asking, they said they heard this story about you playing in Golden Gate Park with Jerry, and the person said, was that the only time that he had gotten to interact with Jerry and play on stage with him? So I was like, I'm going to write that into the interview. What's the story?
Yes. Yeah. That
was it?
That was the one and only, like hop up and...
Incredible, though.
Yeah. I mean, that I can recall. Right?
And that was the 87, the Soviet-American Peace Walk.
That's the one. Yeah.
That's very cool. And so, Jeff, on the other side of that, give us a little bit of the what it was like first time you get to play with the other ones. Where if there's like a story of being maybe blown away by anything, maybe you're overcome by just the presence of all of these dudes, or maybe it just starts to click the reality of the gig that you've just walked into.
I mean, just once when those four guys connected and I heard and I said, oh, that's the sound. Obviously I was imagining Garcia's sound, playing and stuff and singing in that, but I was just saying, but hearing that, like when it really locked in, it was just like, I get it.
The machine that they sort of become.
It was evident at that point. And then I was just kind of, oh shit.
What did I get myself into here? Yeah, and I say that because I saw him like 44 times in stadiums and arenas and stuff along the way, which I know is light by Deadhead standards, but it was enough to show you I had some kind.
Never saw him or never.
Right. It's more than your average bear. Say again?
I said I wish I had seen him, but it was like I said, things work out as they do.
You're making up for it.
Well, I'm trying.
Yeah, no, you are for sure. When I went through our interview the other day, Steve, I realized the two cats that we never talked about were Billy and Mickey, and you got to work with the Rhythm Devils. What was how did that one come up?
Oh, that was lovely. Because it was kind of. I mean, we played some of the Dead material, but we also wrote. And so we got to like start tunes and figure stuff out and everything like that. Just to enjoy that part of the process with those guys.
What led to that gig?
Proximity, I guess. It's the same as the rest of the stuff. I was in town. I answered the phone.
You were convenient.
Drove over. Exactly. Yeah.
Any particular highlights? Because you've done more than one. Was that one tour or a few tours? What was the?
No, there was been a bunch of Mickey and Mickey and Billy stuff along the way. Highlights.
Fun story.
The highlights for that for me were just the production when it was big, 2 drums, bass, and guitar, and that was it. Because it just sounded enormous with so few people, So that was a real neat trip.
Well, I can imagine.
Just on a production level, it was just like startlingly cool.
Right, because it's a different sort of band. You're saying the Rhythm Devils.
Yeah.
Right. It's not like your average rock band, and that lends itself into like Mickey's background. Mickey certainly was very into international music, which they call world music in some schools, and a lot of different percussion, Babatundi, Olatunchi. I remember in college playing those records.
I too also had my induction ceremony. It was at Madison Square Garden into the Rhythm Devils, where they placed horns on my forehead, dressed up in devil's capes and pitchforks and the whole thing. So that was quite an honor too. So a little bit part of the Rhythm Devils. So.
Yeah, well, and what a great venue to have your. That was the first time you got to do anything with it.
No. I was saying that was the induction ceremony. Was like we finished the first set. All of a sudden, it was like, Mickey wants to see you in the dressing room right now. So I walked around the corner. I said they were in red satin capes and had pitchforks, and they placed these horns on my forehead. And so that's a pretty cool devil incarnation there. I like it. I was reading. Mike Gordon was a part of that.
Say again.
Mike Gordon was also a part of that.
A little fish activity there. I was talking to Steve. I mentioned to him Brent at my age, Brent Midland was sort of the guy in the band. He was the new guy to the older fans at the time, but being a young kid, that was my guy. Because I was like, he's not new to me. I love his sound. I love the organ. I love the look in his face. He was very authentic. It was like I'd look at him and think, man, that guy is... Say again?
He had the passion, obviously, and it was, I think, a big part of the sound, too, myself. And actually, we share the same birthday. And I've been playing his organ for years now. That's been part of my rig. It still is to this day. So it's a little. Ooh.
How did that? Now that was really the question. How did you end up playing Brent's rig?
Steve Parrish. He said when Bob had inquired about like getting a B3 into Rat Dog, he kind of like pulled me aside, said we're going to give you this one. There's a bunch of neckties on the thing, on both legs. Gotta leave. Don't ask. Leave them. And that was it. And then there was a couple of occasions where some people from the audience or whatever started stealing these things. So I had a good friend of mine that started replacing them with Garcia ties that he was purchasing. But it was we kept honored, and true to that, to where the ties still remain to this day. They're there. When you come to a show, you'll see them hanging on each leg. And
so the Dead production people had just retained the keyboard that he had used. As I'm reading it.
Yeah. If you saw the one that used to have all the stickers all over it, those stickers have been removed, but you can still see all the outlines of the stickers, so it's kind of cool.
That is very spooky, though, that you're sitting there playing at his... That's heavy.
Yeah, tell me about it. So far, I guess I'm the longest standing survivor of the chair.
Right.
So
and
keep it that way.
And that had only that wasn't like, meaning that hadn't been used by previous keyboardists before him. That was his.
Not to my knowledge.
When we talked the other day, Steve, I didn't get a Bobby story out of you. You had such a colorful Jerry story. You had all kinds of folks were reacting to that. It was very good on the radio. And you've gotten to, the thing with you and Bobby is you've gotten to do stuff in the past. You're lucky you've got this campfire tour coming up in the future. You've played with him in a variety of different settings. Doesn't have to be an on-stage story, but it can be. Or it could just be something where maybe you've learned from Bobby. Could be a special guest was there that night. What comes to mind as a moment with him that it can be encapsulated in a story?
Okay, so really, really, really long time ago, we were on the road. Might have been in like Santa Cruz or Santa Barbara or something like that. It was Southern California, as I recall. Kingfish back then, somewhere back in the 80s. And we were at the hotel after the gig, and we were entertaining ourselves in the hall room. We had some kind of air pistol, and we had set up some phone books down at the end of the hall, with some targets, some beer cans or whatever, and we were plinking in the hotel.
In the hallway of the hotel.
In the hallway of the hotel, and enjoying ourselves so much, we thought we would, it was very late at night, but we thought we would get the chief and, see if he'd join the fun. So we bang on his door, and nothing. We bang on his door, nothing. We bang on his door. Eventually he comes out, and we'd woke him up or something like that, and he was completely like...
Sleepy time face.
Yeah, like Picasso kind of, sideways thing. And we're all standing there. We show him the gun. And he holds up a finger and it goes back in. He comes out with a mirror, like a makeup mirror, right? And he takes the gun, he takes the mirror, and he's still standing in the door. And he's holding the mirror like this, and he's holding the gun over his shoulder, and he's like looking. And he finally gets like the view he wants, and pulls the trigger and hits the fire bell down at the end of the hall. It was like this giant long hall. Bang! And rings the bell, and hands the gun back and goes back in the room. And I always thought that was just like super impressive, He's
did it
so
using the mirror?
Sick, and he was so tired, but he did
aiming using the mirror.
Aiming behind himself with the mirror and hit the fire bell. Yeah.
Well, he is a cowboy. That's a unique Bobby Weir story that and I don't think, do you tell that one too often?
Not too often, man, but I had the opportunity to tell it in his presence recently, and he remembered it and confirmed it. So
Well, there's some validation right there.
It's a true story.
It sounds it, and now we've documented it yet one more time. Before we go to wrap it up, because I know you got another set coming up here, so I'll let you go in a moment. You were part of, Jeff, this, they don't like to call it the Grateful Dead reunion of 2015. I was reading a little bit. It's the Fairly Well shows that occurred. But to fans who simplify things understandably in their own lives, it was the Dead back together, the surviving members of the Grateful Dead. They're back together again with a bunch of very talented special guests. Trey from Fish was there. You were there to talk about when you first found out this was going to be happening. Perhaps somebody calling you, asking you. There must have been some moment when it clicked, like, whoa, this is going to be something very special.
Well, I remember getting the phone call, and I was like, holy cow, I guess this is happening.
Who called?
Management called, so it was just like, this gave me a heads up that this was going to be going on. And again, at the time, don't talk about it yet. We'll just see what happens. And but it all formed up, and I think it went spectacular. It was wow. You walk out in the stadiums and just the energy of 80,000 people out there. It was just like, holy shit. It was awesome. I don't really much more to say. It was just kind of pinching myself.
Yeah, no doubt. You're still, and they're doing pretty large venues again.
Yeah, no, Dead and Company's been doing well. We've been doing, kind of doing some the baseball arena stadiums and and so forth. And it's just been on a rise. And we're obviously doing the summer coming up, and we'll see what holds in the near future. But that's been a very positive thing, and everybody seems to be having a great time.
John Mayer's still doing stuff with them.
Well, he's doing it, yeah. So
he's one of the main cats up in the front.
Yes, he's the piece of Dead and Company in there, and he's spectacular in his own right. Guy can play.
Yeah, no, he definitely can play. No question about that. And a final question, because you've got a little tour coming up that is a unique one, and I don't know a lot about this whole. Explain, especially for folks who may not be as aware of the Bobby Weir, the Campfire Tour. What is exactly that? The cowboy experience.
Oh, I mean, from my perspective, with all the rest of the stuff that's gone on, with the post Jerry Dead, this is the first thing I've seen where the songwriting itself kind of lit me up. These guys have written some really cool material. They're really good tunes, and it's a pleasure to play them. So it's for me, what I'm seeing as I relate to the thing musically, it's just like, here's some more stuff for the book, that's actually good in that book. It works.
And what's the format of those shows? It's it's Bobby, and who else?
There's a band called The National, right? If you're hip to those guys. It's those guys, and an occasional guest. Sometimes we have some singers, or, somebody else will hop in. I mean, the last tour, John Mayer hopped in. So it's that, but it's weird, and doing his cowboy thing. It's beautiful.
And music from throughout his legacy.
Yeah. It's like a set of new stuff normally, which is fantastic, and then back to some of the
catalog,
the older catalog, the book. Yeah.
I love it. It's very cool. It's Steve Kimock. It's Jeff Chimenti. We really appreciate both you guys. Much luck on this big tour. It was great to meet you today, and thank you.
Thank you very much for having us.
You are very welcome. And my brother, thank you. Great. Thank you for following up what we did on the phone the other day. I really appreciate it.
All right, my pleasure. Thank you.
You're welcome.